If this past year has taught us anything, it's that changes to our routines can have a drastic effect on our lives. I remember how being forcibly confined within my home during the first lockdown had made me realize that all the aspects of my life I deemed to be regular had actually become completely irregular. One of these aspects happened to be time. Now, I know I'm not alone in saying that quarantine has made time feel entirely different than it used to. For me personally, I felt time slipping through my fingers as I succumbed to essay deadlines and an Animal Crossing addiction that took like 6 months to cure. And yet, during this period, I sensed that I had no grasp on my own life. As time continued to pass by me, everything seemed so devoid of purpose. I found myself wandering aimlessly in a world that seemed to age prematurely while I was just struggling to age with it. This realization rendered me so anxious and so frightened that I felt utterly helpless. I began to wonder from that point onwards if there were not a solution to this existential dilemma. I began to wonder if it were not possible to escape time. What does that even mean anyway? Time. Time defines the nature of our existence. We breathe its essence as though it were oxygen. It's like an omnipresent life force that allows us to make sense of a reality that is often so painful to comprehend. It constitutes the framework through which we perceive both the world and ourselves. It was the great philosopher St. Augustine who stated that time for us humans was developed to have a conception of the past, present, and future, and that this would then allow us to have a better perception on the course of our lives. This is significant because this proves that time is inalienably attached to human existence. We cannot break away from its grip. We cannot fight its clasp. We cannot run from its hold on us. And yet, this does not stop us, pesky human beings, from attempting to resist it. We dread time. We flee from it. We try to escape its grasp, despite it being seemingly impossible to do so. You may ask yourselves, if time is so fundamental, if time is so intrinsic to the human experience, then why do we nevertheless fear it? Should we not accept the passing of time with open arms? I mean, it's not like we can stop clocks from ticking or anything, so what about time do we find to be so alarming? The answer lies in one of our most primitive fears, death. We fear death more than we fear anything else. We, as human beings, are biologically engineered to sustain our life to the best of our ability. Our most primal instinct is to protect ourselves from any impending danger that could pose a threat to us. This is important because time effectively corrupts the human body. It ages us, decays us, slowly but surely, until we are but dust and bone. Ultimately, we must come to realize that time is, in fact, the terrifying source of our own mortality. However, is there not a way to escape the pressures that time exerts onto us? Is it not possible to escape time? This fundamentally philosophical question may seem completely unfeasible, utterly impractical, entirely impossible, and yet I will present you with different ways of escaping the clutches of time that are actually accessible to all of us. Just to be clear, my understanding of the ways in which one can escape death are founded in a fully corporal conception, which has little to do with spiritual and religious understandings, and beliefs concerning the afterlife. What we must first come to understand is that existence can be defined in different ways. Typically and intuitively, we would say that a being exists through a living entity or body, like you and I right now. However, existence can also embody a non-physical presence tied to the human mind. Now, think about this. Our minds have the capacity to escape time because they exist independently of our world's physical limitations. I know this may sound puzzling, but allow me to explain further. Although the body can decay, the mind never does. A complete death, in every sense of the term, would embody not only the end of our life within this universe, but the end of our life within it. Death means to have our trace on this world erased. It means to have our mark on the world eradicated. It means to have any influence, any achievement, any memory utterly forgotten. And this point leads me to the first way in which one may escape time. If we are able to utilize our memory to ensure our legacy and our lives past our death, then we can actually escape time. And we can do this through the powerful tool of remembrance. What is remembrance? Remembrance embodies a deliberate effort to ensure the legacy of an individual in order to commemorate their contributions to, let's say, to society, to their families, and even to themselves. Remembrance, if you will, it's like the collectivization of memory, a vessel through which we are able to live through timelessly. Our existence perseveres through others. Even after we die, our friends will remember us for the many times we made them laugh. Our teachers will remember us for our blossoming dreams and ambitions. Our colleagues will remember us for all the hard work we've placed into our projects. And our children will remember us for the many lessons we have taught them. We remember the smell of our college boyfriend's mac and cheese, just as well as we can remember a Van Gogh painting so beautiful it nearly brought us to tears. I will never forget the endless afternoons I've spent exploring the streets of Paris with my friends and scouting every museum we could afford to go to as mere high schoolers. This is so important because here we understand that every human being has impacted and affected the world that we live in, whether through small actions or monumental achievements. However, as powerful as remembrance may seem, it does have its drawbacks. If memory is not shared with others or passed along to new generations, then it can actually die with the consciousness that contained it. We wouldn't be able to remember our grandmother's beloved apple crumble recipe, just like we wouldn't be able to remember the millions of soldiers that had passed away during wars if their efforts weren't physically materialized. Our grandmother has a recipe, and soldiers have burial sites. In both cases, the lives and legacies of individuals had to be physically materialized for them to truly last through time, as people keeping them in their memories was simply not enough. And this leads me straight to the second way in which one may escape time. The physical realization of human accomplishment can't transcend time because anything materialized does not die the way living beings do. Our trace on the world needs to be externalized for it to truly last through time. Arguably, the most ideal way we would materialize ourselves is by utilizing our minds and our talents for the betterment of society. In this sense, our ideas and our actions become the means through which we're able to resist time. I think it's clear that notable works that people leave behind are a very effective way of escaping time if they are maintained and preserved properly. The most exceptional composers still bring beauty and brilliance to their music, years, often centuries after they've died. The most exceptional artists express their visions through their pieces, inspiring emerging talents of future generations. The most exceptional writers share their understandings and their experiences of the world, adding to the collective account of human experiences. And the most exceptional philosophers help us understand our purpose as human beings, guiding us through the ages. It's clear that certain individuals like Alfred Hitchcock, Johann Sebastian Bach, Frida Kahlo, Jane Austen, and Confucius have effectively escaped the clutches of time through their ability to leave behind notable works. So here, we have effectively established two ways of escaping time: remembrance and the materialization of ideas. However, in our quest to escape time and death, have we not, in some sense, dismissed a much larger issue at hand here? Is it possible that our quest for escapism may lead us down a path of disappointment, disillusionment, and perpetual nihilism? By granting time so much importance, so much power, have we not actually contradicted our original goal? Because in that sense, time would then have even more power over us than we originally intended it for it to have. Our desire for survival and immortality may in fact dismiss the more important aspects of life. It may dismiss the fact that life should be enjoyed to the fullest. Existence is more than just a purely primal state of being. I can prove this. Just close your eyes for a moment. Now, visualize all of the moments in your life in which you've experienced life's joyousness, vibrancy, and exhilaration. A serene morning walk, a lovely dinner with friends, or your long-expected graduation. These moments, they embody significance, purpose, and meaning. If we were truly the sum of our most basic functions, then we would not revel in the beauty of a sunset that paints the sky gold. We would not savor a meal that reminds us of home every time we took a bite. We would not feel immense joy at the very idea of being held in our partner's arms. We would not find hope in moments that seem hopeless. How do we come to terms with the fact that all of these beautiful moments in our lives will eventually fade away and disappear? The answer lies in the rather exceptional story. Long ago, a man born into royalty, wealth, and power lives a life of distinction and privilege. He lives an utterly sheltered existence, confined within palace walls under the rule of his authoritarian father. Despite his prosperity, he remains adventurous, curious of the outside world he was forbidden from exploring. And one day, against his family's wishes, he decides to venture out into the outside world, leaving his life of privilege behind him, naively enthusiastic of the adventures that lay ahead. This enthusiasm is quickly tarnished as he is faced with the horrors of the outside world. As he explores the streets of his city, he is faced with poverty, disease, suffering. Death becomes a part of his existence. He becomes totally disillusioned with his previous life in which he was effectively shielded from such horrors. He comes to the conclusion that life is nothing but suffering and relinquishes any aspects of his life, like luxury or pleasure. And yet, his story does not stop there. He soon comes to realize that although life and existence is inherently filled with misery, it is not solely defined by this. We experience pain, yet this does not define us as human beings. The man comes to understand that life can also be the bearer of wisdom and illumination. He accepts that death is a natural part of life and finds higher enlightenment in several practices that would later become intrinsically linked with this philosophy. This man's name was Siddhartha Gautama, also known as the Buddha. The Buddha's story pertains to our deeply ingrained fears regarding the passage of time. We are desperate to view life through an overwhelmingly positive lens. For this reason, we hope that joyous moments in our life last. We cherish them and we long to experience them again, because these are the things that make living life worthwhile. However, we are bound to experience hardships, discomfort, and despair. And unfortunately, our fervent desire to only experience the positive in life has an unintended negative consequence. The hardships we are bound to face become even more disparaging. However, if we can embrace the fact that life can be as beautiful as it can be ugly, as pleasant as it can be arduous, and that death is a part of life, we will come much closer to softening the ravages of time. It is possible to escape time through legacy, influence, memory, and notable works, yet we should never make this our central purpose in life, like a goal to achieve or a treasure to seek, as this ultimately diminishes the joys of human existence. To constantly focus on our impending deaths dismisses the fact that life should be lived to the fullest. For using the time we have wisely, understanding that life is as light as it can be dark, and endeavoring to ensure that the lives of those around us, those that we love, improve more and more each day, may be the only way in escaping its tight grasp. Thank you to the American Library in Paris for allowing me to use this space for this talk, and thank you for listening.